Fantagraphics has been doing a tremendous job with reprinting the Atlas Comics library, and this week we're getting the 6th installment of that. And just in time for Halloween, it is Shiver As You Read, with great comics with Joe Maneely, Gene Colan. We got Bernie Krigstein in here, Stan Lee, John Romita Sr. So many great cartoonists and writers and creators in this book. You're going to want to check this out. I'm going to flip the camera around, put this under the microscope. Stay tuned and watch this video until the end. And we're back. My name is Taylor. This is Taylor Talks Comics. Thank you for joining me. This is day 1 of my 31 days of horror comics. So please subscribe because you don't want to miss out on any of these. I'm doing 31 days. Every single day a new video will come out showing off a different horror comic or horror comic related topic. I appreciate your support in that. Comment down below with your thoughts on this Atlas collection. Tell me what your favorite Atlas collection's been so far. Which one you're excited that's coming out in the future. And subscribe if you haven't already. Did I say that already? Give the video a thumbs up. All that jazz. But yes, this is Atlas Comics Library, number 6. Shiver As You Read. It's featuring weird horror from Men's Adventures and Amazing Detective Cases. Great cover here. This book was designed by Ian Chalgren. He's a book designer that I've talked about on my channel quite a bit. And he's taken over this line from Ryan McCardle, who I talked about, I think the last time I did one of these reviews, who sadly passed away. But Ian Chalgren's taken over, following the same designs that Ryan did, but choosing his own bits and pieces that he wants to do with the collections. Here's the spine of it, so it matches all of the other spines of the collections. And here's the back cover, which, an amazing piece. I'm glad that Ian chose this piece because it is eye-popping, literally, and it's just a cool back cover. But I will say that the story that this monster appears in, I was kind of disappointed by this monster because, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But it's such a great story or picture in a piece. So let's open it up. We have the same style in papers that we have with all the other previous Atlas collections. And then here's the title page. And then, like I said, Ian Chalgren is the volume designer. Ryan McCardle is the series designer. And put out by Fantagraphics in conjunction with Marvel. It features the complete issues of Amazing Detective Cases 11 through 14, which is March through September 1952. And Men's Adventures 21 through 26, which is May through March 53 and 54. So these are pre-code horror, if you're familiar with that term, before the Comics Code Authority with Frederick Wertham came about, when he was going to war on comic books and the inappropriateness of the content. This all predates that. So the horror in here is, there's no censorship or no code put down on it as far as what they can and cannot do. So this is a great table of contents, just as the other volumes have had, where they break down each issue by story and do the credits the best to their knowledge. So they'll see sometimes there'll be a question mark behind someone's name because they think that Bill Everett wrote that issue, but they're not entirely sure. And some of them will say unknown because they're not sure about that either. The record keeping for the credits was not the best back then, but these are the best to their knowledge, based on Dr. Vassallo, who I'll get to in a second. He's the utmost historian on Atlas, and he's kind of went through and tried to figure out these answers, and this is the best they could do. The covers are done by a litany of artists: Carl Burgos, Saul Brodsky, Joe Maneely, George Russo's Bill Everett, Sid Shore's Russ Heath, and then some more Bill Everett and Saul Brodsky. The covers are great. I absolutely love the covers in this collection, which I'll get to that in a second. But we're going to start off with Dr. Michael Vassallo and his introduction. If you've seen any of my overviews of the previous Atlas collections, you know I've said the phrase, these are worth the price of admission alone, and they still are. Michael Vassallo, Dr. Vassallo, is the utmost historian on Atlas comics. I don't know there's anyone in the world that knows more about Atlas era comics than him, and I'm glad that these collections are coming out with his writing because it's adding so much context and historical context for these comics. Something I talk about on my channel quite a bit is the preservation of history in this industry and how important that is. And if we didn't have these things like these reprint collections and people writing this, all this anecdotal data on these stories, then eventually these are going to be, washed through history and forgotten about. So I'm glad that we're preserving that in 2025 for these comics that came out 70 years ago. And They do such a good job picking these things, which I think Vassallo picks these. But like just like these old covers showing you what Amazing Detective looked like before the issues that we're about to read. Here's the Amazing Detective case, the covers that predates the one we're going to, because this collects, what I say, issues 11 through 14, I think. Yeah, 11 through 14. So these are from the first 10 issues, what those covers look like, which are all really great. And then here's some like original art pages, some more Men's Adventures covers featuring Human Torch that predates this collection. And just so much knowledge and all throughout here. Again, worth the price of admission alone. I think you can even, whenever this line is done, which I don't think they'll ever be able to reprint everything from Atlas because there's so much. But you can even compile all these introductions into one book, and it could just be like the history of Atlas Comics. So this is really cool too. This is, I think this finishes off the introduction. Yeah. And this is the original art page to the cover that's used on this collection. So you can see what the original art looked like with like the paste ups and everything for the lettering. And you don't have I've not seen a lot of original art pages from Atlas. I don't know that there's so many that exist, but I digress. Here's the first issue collected. This is Amazing Detective number 11. And don't fret if you're not familiar. Don't fret that this is only collecting 11 through 14 and Men's Adventures. Here's 21 through 26. Don't fret that you don't have the issues before that. These are all one and done stories. That's just how they're kind of anthologies, one and done stories. You don't need to have read anything before this to get the full gist. So incredible covers. I just love the title lettering, the splash image here, and then the two little smaller images over here, which sometimes there's three. Just such a cool little overall package. I wish comic book covers still looked like that, but what can you do? So these are facsimile editions in the sense that they also maintain the ads that were in them. And the restoration by Paul Baresh, Ben Horick, and Alan Harvey. Alan Harvey is like, I think, the main proprietor of that, is all beautiful. The fidelity that they use as far as the original comics are. So Dr. Vassallo collects all these single issues, or he already has them in his collection. And then I think he sends them over, maybe scans them in for Alan Harvey. And Alan Harvey touches it up just enough to where he wants it to look exactly as close to the original issue as possible. He wants it to look like you just pulled this off the racks in the 1950s, and you can read it that way. It's not touched up and recolored with garish modern coloring or anything like that. This is the true fidelity of these original issues. And the coloring is just magnificent. I love all the textures of the original newsprint and things. Sometimes they're using zipatones at other points. But just amazing coloring all throughout this. Like, this is the coloring that I wish comics would use these days. There are some prose stories written in here as well. That was something that they were able to do back in the 50s to skirt around certain postal issues or laws. In order to get their comics to be shipped in a certain price point, they had to at least include so many pages of prose written work. It's just a weird little thing, but so you get some of these prose stories throughout here as well. But just incredible stuff. I'm going to show you off some of my favorite stories here in just a second. But I just want to flip through some of this great work here. Here's another great cover. Here's the second issue. And again, 3 different images here. A great piece here, which I think this one was by... Was this Sol Brodsky? Yeah, this was Sol Brodsky. The Man Who Shrunk. Again, the title lettering too is just really cool. I love the layouts of this too, how it looks like a file folder, because they're doing a detective story here. There's some innovative layouts that you don't see in the Golden Age too much. Harrigan's Wake was an interesting story. So this one, this old mob boss is going to play dead and act like he's dead to then spy on his cohorts to see who comes to his funeral, what kind of things they say about him. But like all these stories, it has a twist ending where it doesn't end so well for him. It doesn't end exactly how he imagined, which all these stories, like I said, they all have like twist endings to them. They're kind of like Twilight Zone is how I always describe them. So this is the one that has the back cover image right here that was used. Again, that's such a great piece and such a great character design. I absolutely love that. But this actually does not appear in the story at all. Like, you flip through here, the aliens in here have a really cool character design to them. In the rocket ship, it's just cool to see like 1950s era sci-fi and what they predicted rockets would look like and things. But you go through here, and this is the end. The giant eye monster does not actually appear in the story at all. I was like, what the heck? I was excited to see what this giant hand was going to do. I don't know. I don't understand. That was a weird choice. Because a lot of times these splash images it'll be like the preview of the issue, the story going on. So it'll be like some part of the story will be in the splash page, and then it starts with the beginning of the story. And it goes on. It's kind of like the method that they were using back then for storytelling. Also, The Eerie Escape was done by Bernard Krigstein, which I'm familiar with Krigstein's work with EC Comics mostly. I didn't know he did Atlas work. I don't know how much Atlas work he did, but it was great to see Bernard Krigstein's work in here in the same era, the same decade that he was doing EC Comics. So that was really cool. The next issue is number 13 here. A lot of executions and things throughout these stories. It's just an interesting anecdote, but again, I just love these cover layouts. They do change from time to time as far as how they look, but close shave. Like the artwork is just so amazing back then. And there's so many artists throughout here that I was not familiar with, that I was looking up what their other artwork they did. And a lot of them only ever worked with Atlas and then disappeared after that. So just incredible stuff. I love, again, these panels, these faces. So, I don't know. I just had so much fun reading this era of comics that I love these Atlas stories. So this is Ghost Story. This is by Bill Everett, one of my favorite artists of this era. And this is a guy that's facing an execution because he's on the electric chair. And his last words are, "I'm going to be a ghost that haunts you." And then all the police detectives and things are like, yeah, whatever. And then here's the ghost. Like, it's such a great image, too. It's like not what you think of with a haunting ghost. Here's a cover that didn't use any of those sort of small panels. I do want to flip ahead here to the Joe Maneely story. I always like to show off Joe Maneely's artwork. There is a big collection of a big oversized hardcover, which I think I've done a video on. I don't know if I have. Let me know in the comments if I have or not. I can't remember. But Joe Maneely's artwork was just amazing. He's like one of the great what-ifs of comics. He sadly and tragically passed away in the late 50s with a train accident. And then like the next day, Jack Kirby comes back to Marvel. And then it's like Jack Kirby helps usher in the Silver Age of Marvel. And it's just like, what would have happened if Joe Maneely was there for the Silver Age? Because Joe Maneely was Stan Lee's favorite artist to work with before Jack Kirby came back. The shrunken head. Like, this artwork, again, the coloring and the artwork, it's just so incredible in this. You would think that, because EC Comics are like the head honcho, like the premier, the cream of the crop when it comes to comics of this era. But all the artwork throughout these, like, there's no slouch in here. Like, this is not a step down from EC Comics. Like, the artwork is still impeccable. This is a Joe Sinnott story. Joe Sinnott does a lot of has a few stories throughout this collection, doing the pencils and inks for his own work, which is another interesting aspect. I don't see a lot of Joe Sinnott artwork. I've seen all his artwork where he's inking over like Jack Kirby or any of the other future artists that worked on like Thor and Fantastic Four, but not necessarily where he's doing the pencils himself. Here's the cover that was used for the collection that Ian Chalgren kind of reworked in order to be the new cover for the collection, but there's that. Midnight in the Morgue. But yeah, so if you're a fan of like I Walked on the Moon, this is a fun sci-fi story. If you're a fan of like the EC Comics and you haven't tried any of these out, I recommend these. They've done 2 horror genre titles so far with this one, and then I think it was Adventures into Horror, whatever the first one was called. Adventures of Terror, I forget what it's called. Whatever the first one they released of the Atlas Library was a horror also, and then there's this one. So, you know, if that's the genre that you most want to read, then I would recommend those 2 titles. But they've also done war and crime, and then we have a romance title coming out later. Now in the back here, this is really great because, like I said, there's a lot of artists in here that I wasn't familiar with their names, and they have biographies of every single creator involved in the story. So we have like Reed Crandall, Gil Evans, Bill Everett, Jim Mooney, Fred Kita, George Klein. Just picking out names here. Ed Robbins, Paul Reinman, John Romita Sr., Warner Roth. I was excited to see his name in there. George Tuska. Those are some Silver Age artists I'm familiar with. So yeah, awesome collection. I'm stoked to have this on my shelves along with my other Atlas collections out this week from Fantagraphics. Check it out. And subscribe to my channel. 31 days of horror comics all throughout the month of October. You don't want to miss out on that. Give the video a thumbs up. Comment down below. I want to talk to you guys in the comments. And everyone, keep talking comics.